Hello, and welcome to this session of the Ally Self-Publishing Conference. My name's Rachel McColllin, and in this session I'm going to be talking to you about author websites. Now, you might be thinking, who's she and why can she tell me anything about author websites? Well, I've been a web designer and web developer since 2010, since way back before any of us were using mobile phones to access the internet, and when WordPress was just a humble blogging platform. So I've been building sites for clients for all those years, and in the meantime building up an author career. And I find myself going to a lot of writing events where people ask me for advice about author websites. And at one of those events last year, somebody said, why don't you write a book about this? So I did. And that book is called WordPress for Writers. But in this session, I'm not just going to talk to you about WordPress. I'm going to talk about author websites in general. So over the next half an hour or so, you're going to learn which options are available to you for your website, so what platforms there are. You'll learn about hooking your website up to your newsletter to get sign-ups. You'll learn about selling books online directly through your website, and you'll also learn about content and how to use the content in your site to attract readers and engage your existing readers. So let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover during this session. Firstly, I'm going to talk a little bit about why your author website is so important. Then we'll look at the options that you have available to you for creating an author website. We'll look at how you create content that will attract and engage readers, how you use your website to link up to your mailing list and get new subscribers, and if you want to get advanced, how to sell books direct via your website and cut out the middleman. So let's start with why a website is so important. Do you already have a website? If we were running a physical session here, I'd ask people to put their hands up, but I can't do that. So I just want you to put your hand up in front of your screen if you're not somewhere that it's too embarrassing to do so. So if you've got an author website, tick for you, brownie points all round. Your website is somewhere that you have complete control over. Now, you might be thinking, I don't need a website, I've got a Facebook page, or I've got a Twitter account, or I've got my Amazon author page that I've optimized and I've made that look fantastic. But what happens if Facebook suddenly decides to stop showing your updates to your fans? Now that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because Facebook has already done that. I don't know about you, but I've got three Facebook author pages. I'm greedy like that. And Facebook, I can put a post on those pages and Facebook will hardly show it to anybody. So it's pretty useless when it comes down to it. Now, obviously, your newsletter is something you have much more control over. And that's why everybody says you have to have an author newsletter. It's the most important way to keep in touch with your fans. But where can you get those sign-ups to that newsletter? And the best place to do that is on your website. So your website is the hub. It's the center of your author platform. Now, author platform, I know it's a bit of yucky marketing speak, but author platform is a really good term to describe your entire presence, both online and offline. It's everything you do where you're representing yourself as an author. So your website is somewhere you have control and you can display who you are as an author, what sort of stuff you write, what your voice is, what you like to talk about, and you can really, you can choose to show your personality on your website through a blog or something like that, or you can choose to be a bit more distant. But either way, your website is your opportunity to show potential readers that you've got a professional brand online. Now, there's another marketing term, brand. It's also useful, and the way that your website looks will reflect your author brand, and it will reflect the look of your book covers, for example. So your website is really important because it's somewhere you have control over, and it's a central point from which you can direct people to all the other aspects of your author platform, which will include your newsletter, your social media accounts, your Amazon pages and pages on other book retailers, and of course your books themselves. So having an author website is really, really important because people will search for you online if they've read your books, and you don't want to pass up the opportunity to tell them all about your back catalogue. So we now know that author websites are important, and I really hope I've convinced you. What are the options that you've got available to you for creating your website? So there are a few of these, and I'm going to start by looking at some examples of blogging platforms that you can use. So let's start by looking at some of the blogging platforms that are available to you. And there are less of these now than I would have said there were 10 or maybe even 5 years ago. The most popular is Blogger. That's run by Google, which could give you some SEO benefits. SEO, if you're not familiar with it, is search engine optimization, and that's how you get yourself found on Google. But to be honest, I don't rate Blogger for author websites. If you look at these examples of designs that it's showing you here on the home page, they don't really look all that modern or professional. They're all quite narrow. They don't take up the full width of the page. There's no option to add a full width banner that links through to your newsletter. You can't link it directly to your mailing list, so all you can do is give people a link to a sign-up form that's provided by your mailing list provider, as against having a sign-up form right in your website, which makes you look more professional. And I think that using a platform like Blogger will make your website look less professional than it should if you want to be a successful indie author. And I'm assuming that you're watching this presentation because you want to be a successful indie author and you want to use your website to help you do that. So that's Blogger. It's free, it's easy, but I wouldn't recommend it because I don't think it'll give you the most professional website that you could get. So let's look at another option for a blogging platform, and this is Tumblr, which you might not have thought of for author websites. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to do a lot of blogging and you just want to do what's called microblogging, where you post quick updates rather than full blog posts, you could find Tumblr useful. Tumblr has got a much more modern and professional design. It allows you to add little updates, which could be snippets, they could be outtakes or bits from your work, snippets of your writing, they could be updates on what you're doing, they could be photos, they could be videos, all sorts of things. And it's designed to be quick and easy to use. It's like somewhere in between posting to social media and adding a full post to a website. So Tumblr, again, has some advantages, but like Blogger, it doesn't let you hook up directly to your mailing list. So those are two of the most popular blogging platform options. Now, you've also got the option of using a website builder, which is something that's much more common amongst authors these days. And from my experience of chatting to people on the Ally Facebook group, the most popular platform that people use amongst website builders is Wix. Now, Wix is really easy to get to grips with. It uses a drag and drop interface that is designed to let you create your website really quickly without any technical ability whatsoever. And it has some real advantages there. But it has one big disadvantage in my view. Your website will be hosted by Wix. If Wix no longer existed, or if Wix changed their pricing plans, and if you've been familiar with what's been going on with MailChimp lately, you'll know that companies can do this out of the blue. If Wix changed everything, you could be in real trouble because you don't really own your website. You don't own the space that it's on, you don't own the code, you don't even own the content. If Wix disappeared, you would lose everything about your website. So Wix does have its benefits. It's easy to use. If you're not technical, it's an intuitive interface, and it does let you hook up to MailChimp for your mailing list. But MailChimp is the only mailing list provider you can link it to. So it's fine if you're happy sticking with MailChimp, given all the changes with MailChimp and the fact that MailChimp is going to be more expensive now because they've changed their pricing plans. But if you want to use another mailing list provider, you can't hook it up directly to Wix. All you can do is add a link through to a sign-up form that's on your mailing list provider's website, which means it doesn't have your brand. So that's Wix. Another option you've got is Squarespace. This is a very similar platform to Wix. It's a drag and drop website builder designed to be easy, not really designed for blogging. They're designed for small businesses, but you can add a blog to them, and a blog is really useful, as we'll see shortly. And again, it's quick and easy, but you don't own it. Your website is on Squarespace's real estate and not your own. Now, Squarespace does have one advantage, I think, over Wix for authors, is that you can sign up for a plan and you can have more than one website on that plan. I think you can just have 2 websites, or it might be a few, but it's not a lot, but it is more than one website that you can have. And that means that if you've got more than one pen name, you could set up more than one website using Squarespace. And it's got nice modern templates. It includes lots of effects like you've just seen, which look fantastic, but can slow your site down and aren't all that brilliant for accessibility. So I would resist being tempted by all these shiny effects and things moving around, because to be honest, most people are going to be accessing your website on mobile, and on a small screen they don't want to be seeing things flying in and out. They just want to read your content and find out more about you and buy your books, most importantly. So that's Squarespace. Another alternative for a website builder is called Weebly, and this is built by a company called Square, who are a competitor to PayPal, so they take payments. So if you're thinking of selling books direct on your site, you might want to think about using Weebly. Now, the one disadvantage is that I've tried to find evidence of Weebly supporting VAT, because if you're trading in the European Union, you need to charge VAT, and you don't want to be bothering with all the hassle of working all that out for yourself. You want an e-commerce provider that will deal with that and do the reporting for you. I can't find any evidence in Weebly's documentation that shows that they do that. So there's a downside there with Weebly, and I'll show you some alternatives that you can do that with. So the next option that you've got is WordPress, and there are two flavours of WordPress, WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So WordPress.org is self-hosted WordPress. It's the software that runs WordPress. And if you get a self-hosted site, what you need to do is find yourself a hosting provider, and then you install the WordPress software with your hosting provider or on your hosting space. So you're renting some space and then you're installing software that you then own. WordPress is released under a license that means you then own the code and you own all the content, and it's all yours. It doesn't belong to them at all. Now obviously you don't own the space on the server, you're renting that from somebody, but if you go with a reputable hosting provider, chances are they're not going to go anywhere. And the other thing is, it's incredibly easy to migrate a WordPress website from one hosting provider to another. A good hosting provider will do that for you. But if you don't feel quite up to setting up self-hosted website, bearing in mind that you can do it with a one-click interface on a lot of hosting providers, but if you don't feel up to doing that, you've got WordPress.com as an alternative. Now this is WordPress, very, very similar software, but instead of being hosted with your own hosting provider that you pay directly, it's hosted on the WordPress.com servers. So it's more limited. You can get a free site, but with a free site, you'll have adverts and you won't be able to have your own domain name. So you'll have, for example, if I used Rachel McColllin, I would be at rachelmccollin.wordpress.com instead of rachelmccollin.com. But you can pay for a more expensive plan, for a premium plan that allows you to have your own domain name and also removes ads and adds some more features, such as more choice of themes. Because with the free plan, the themes that you have available to you are fairly limited. They're not bad, they're pretty good. And if you do want to use WordPress.com, what I would do is start with a free plan, try it out, get to grips with it, and decide if that's what you want to stick with. If you then decide you want to spend money, you might actually be better off migrating to WordPress.org or self-hosted WordPress. And if you do decide to switch from WordPress.com to WordPress.org, this guide on my website will show you exactly how to do it. So those are the options available to you when it comes to creating your author website. You've got blogging platforms, website builders, WordPress.com and WordPress.org. Now, I'm a bit biased about WordPress myself, having written a book about it, but there's a reason for that bias, and that's because I think WordPress is a really good content management system, and it's the best way to get yourself a professional website. So my advice, and the advice of the Alliance of Independent Authors, is to get yourself a self-hosted WordPress site. If you don't feel quite ready to do that, a WordPress.com site is a great starting point. So let's move on to the content that you're going to add to your site. And the content in your site will have two roles. The first will be to attract people to your site using something called search engine optimization, or SEO. And the second will be to engage those people once they're there and encourage them to either sign up for your newsletter or buy your books. So the way you do this will probably be a bit different depending on whether you're writing fiction or non-fiction. For non-fiction authors, SEO is incredibly important, and keeping a regular blog is a good way of getting yourself some good search engine rankings and of attracting readers. So for example, if you're like me and you've written a book about author websites, I've created loads of posts in my blog all about author websites. So there are specific posts designed to help you to do a specific thing relating to your author website and also relating to online book marketing. If you're a fiction author, you might upload some stories to your website, or you might have a blog about what it's like being a writer, or about your research trips, or anything really that you can think of. But I would say for non-fiction authors, the blog is particularly important, and content marketing is particularly important, because people will be searching for something like, how do I create an author website? And I want my website to rank for that question, or a question like it. So I do a lot of blogging, and I also do SEO. So I optimize my posts to try and increase the chances of them getting picked up by Google in somebody's search results. So as well as blog posts, you've also got static content in your website. So you'll have a home page, which could either be a static page or it could just consist of your latest blog posts. You'll have a page which is about you, so people can find out a little bit more about you and what you write. My advice would be to focus on your writing in that. Don't tell people what you've done in every single job that you've held since you were 18 years old. People don't need to know that, but what they'd like to know is what inspires you and what made you become a writer. There'll also be a page or a number of pages for your books, so you should definitely make sure you've got all your books on your website and you've got links to where people can buy them, because when people have read one of your books, they might come to your website looking to find out about more of them. So make sure you've got books pages on there. There might be pages where you sell books, and there might be more pages about things like your story worlds or your research. You can add whatever you want. So when you create your website, you'll need to take some time to plan your content. The first thing you'll do is create those static pages, and they'll be there for good. But then you'll need to plan what blog content you'll have. Now, how often you blog is entirely up to you. Some people blog every day. Ally's Orna Ross updates her blog every single day, which I think is quite spectacular, to be honest. I don't know how she finds the time to do it. But a lot of people blog every week, so I'll add to my blog once or twice a week for my non-fiction. My fiction blog, once a week is the maximum. I update that one because for fiction it's less of an issue. But if you don't feel you can sustain blogging every week or every day or whatever, just blog as often as you can sustain. It's much better to start off at the pace that you can keep up and stick with that than it is to rush into it right at the beginning and to then peter out and have nothing to write about. So if you have got loads of ideas at the beginning, the platform that you use to create your website might let you schedule content so that you can write a blog post now but schedule it to be published, say, in a month's time. And that's something I do a lot with WordPress. It's a really useful feature if you know you're going to be busy because you're writing a book or you're going on holiday or you've got other commitments. Or, for example, I was out on a book buying spree on Saturday and I normally update my blog every Saturday. So I wrote the post on Friday and I set it to publish on Saturday. And I also set my newsletter to go out on Saturday. Once you've scheduled your content and you've written it and you've published it, you can also think about sharing it. Now, some platforms will let you automatically share all your posts to social media. So WordPress.com and WordPress.org both let you do that. And the way you do it with WordPress.org, self-hosted WordPress, is by installing a plugin called Jetpack, which actually gives you all the features of WordPress.com on your self-hosted site. So it gives you the best of both worlds. And it's a plugin I find really, really useful. So you can use that to automatically share all your new posts to Facebook and Twitter. So you don't need to lift a finger to make sure that people can see that you've updated your blog. So let's take a look at some examples of authors who are using content marketing and using blogging to engage with readers. So here's an example of a great non-fiction blog. The Creative Pen blog by Joanna Penn is a fantastic resource for anybody interested in indie publishing. It has masses of content. I mean, Joanna's been writing this blog for over 10 years now and recently celebrated that on her podcast. And as you can see, it supports these books. So anybody arriving at this blog, and it's got really good SEO. So when you search for terms related to book marketing, you'll often find this comes up first. Somebody searches for one of those terms or for how to do something. They'll find this blog, they'll learn about how to do it via the posts in this blog, and then they'll probably go on to buy one or more of Joanna's books. And I know when I started out as an indie publisher, That's exactly what I did. I Googled all about indie publishing. I Googled lots of different subjects. I found Joanna's blog. I read loads of her posts. I listened to her podcast and I bought her books. So you can see that using content marketing here is something that can be really successful for non-fiction. Another blog that again is in the publishing sphere is Jane Friedman's. Now Jane Friedman is one of the editors of The Hot Sheet. Jane blogs regularly about writing and publishing, and it's not just limited to indie publishing. She covers all different aspects of publishing and writing, and again her blog is one that you'll find if you start searching for things on Google. So it's a good example of how SEO can really help you attract readers. Another blog is David Gochran's. Again, I found him on Google when I was searching for how to boost my books on Amazon. I found his blog, and then I found the Let's Get Digital book, which I bought. I've since bought all of his books. I read his blog and I subscribe to it. And so you can see how, just from my example, and I'm sure there are thousands of people like me, using a blog like this can help you raise your profile and get new readers. Now, you don't have to be a non-fiction author to write a regular blog. Orna Ross adds to her blog every single day, and she not only writes non-fiction, she has a suite of books on creativity, but she also writes poetry and novels. And every day has a theme on her blog, so she will update on a specific topic on each day of the week. So Orna is somebody who's really prolific with her blog and uses that to attract readers of the different genres that she writes in. And here's another example of somebody who writes both fiction and non-fiction, and that's Christine Catherine Rush. She publishes a story every week, and that story is only available on her website for that 1 week until the next story is published, after which point she might publish it in an anthology or via a magazine. She also publishes non-fiction about the business of writing and has written books on the subject. So in this case, the website supports both a fiction and a non-fiction career. And again, you've got regular blogging, at least 2 blog posts every week on this blog. But there are successful authors who don't blog regularly. So here, for example, is Mark Dawson's blog. Now, nobody can argue that Mark Dawson isn't a successful author. He's a multi-million selling author of thrillers and an expert on book marketing. But his blog is only updated very infrequently. So you can see here in his blog, the most recent post is "What Can You Expect From Me in 2019?", which I imagine was written at least 6 months ago. But what Mark does do is he uses his newsletter to keep his fans updated, and he's very active in a Facebook group. So you can sustain a successful indie author career without updating your blog every single day or even every single week. But it is a good idea to add at least some content to it every now and then. But what you need to do is balance that with what you can realistically achieve. And while Mark Dawson's fiction blog isn't updated regularly, his non-fiction blog, at the Self-Publishing Formula, that's updated at least every week. So for non-fiction, it's probably more important to update regularly, but for fiction, you can do it regularly or you can do it less regularly, particularly as you get more advanced in your career and you've already got a readership. Earlier on, the more that you update and the more you add to your site, the more readers you can start to attract. So that brings us to possibly the most important role that your website can play, and that is gathering subscribers to your mailing list. So how do the different providers of websites fare when it comes to hooking up to your mailing list? Well, firstly, website builders, not so good. Wix will link to MailChimp, and you can connect your Wix website and your MailChimp account and get signups directly in your website. Unfortunately, no other mailing list providers connect to Wix, and none of the other website builders let you connect to any mailing list providers. So it means you would have to send people out of your website and into a form provided by your mailing list provider instead if they wanted to sign up for your newsletter. Now, I don't think that's ideal because I think you want people staying on your website so they can keep consuming your content. So how do blogging platforms do? Well, sorry, but blogging platforms don't let you link to your mailing list provider. So you can completely forget that when it comes to automating mailing list signups in your website. But then we have WordPress.com and WordPress.org. WordPress.com will let you link up to MailChimp, but WordPress.org, self-hosted WordPress, gives you even more flexibility. Self-hosted WordPress has a plugin for all of the mailing list providers. So you can get signups from right within your website. So you can create a widget in your sidebar, or you can create a page, or you can create both with a form that people can fill out, sign up to your newsletter without leaving your website. And if you want to learn about connecting your website to your mailing list, I've written a bunch of posts for the Ally blog on exactly how to do that. So again, for me, and also for the Alliance of Independent Authors, that's one of the reasons to use self-hosted WordPress for your website. So let's take a look at some examples of newsletter sign-up forms on author websites. So we already looked at Mark Dawson's website as an example of a website where the blog isn't updated all that regularly, and I think we can safely say it doesn't mean to be, because I don't think he's suffering in terms of book sales. But here's the homepage, and here is a really obvious link to sign up to the mailing list. That is all you get on the homepage. If I can't scroll down, all I can do is sign up here, or I can click through to find out more about Mark. Another example is Adam Croft. Again, really obvious. Here I can scroll down and find out more, but when I first go onto the website, the most obvious thing is joining his VIP club. And you need to make your newsletter sign up really, really obvious so people can't miss it when they come onto your website. Bella Forrest also makes it obvious. Here you've got a form right underneath the navigation menu, and then there's information about her latest books. Susan K. Quinn is a little bit more subtle about it. She has a box here where you add in your email address. And notice that in all of these cases, all you need to provide is your email address. You shouldn't be asking people for more information than you absolutely need, because every field you add to a newsletter sign-up form reduces the number of people who fill it out. Here's another example that's quite creative and subtle, and that's LJ Ross. Her website's beautiful. It's got this it's not really a video, I think it must be a GIF or something, with the birds flying across in the background, and you can see Holy Island blurred out. It's very nice. But here over on the top right, you can sign up for book updates. Not quite as obvious as some of the others, but still there at the top of the site. And let me show you mine. I'm going to be a bit self-indulgent here. So on my non-fiction site, I've got a free book that people get in return for signing up, my reader magnet, and then on my fiction site, it's even more obvious. It's a big banner on the top of my homepage. So in order to integrate your website and your mailing list, you're going to need to use an integration. And here on MailChimp probably has the most integrations. So on the MailChimp website, you can find out which website builders and which website platforms will integrate with MailChimp. And those, as I've already said, include both flavours of WordPress and also include Wix. Alternatively, if you're on WordPress.org, self-hosted WordPress, there are loads of plugins for mailing list providers. So you can either find a plugin that is created by your mailing list provider to allow you to connect directly to them, or you could find a third-party plugin that will connect to your mailing list provider. You just need to find the plugin that works in the way that you want it to and provides a sign-up form that looks the way you want it to. So that's how you add newsletter sign-ups to your website. But what about selling books direct? Now, if you've already got a good readership and you don't need to rely on the Amazon algorithm, for example, to raise your profile and sell your books, you might want to consider selling your books direct from your website, because the advantage of this is you don't have to pay any royalties. So I'm going to look at two options that you have, and that's WooCommerce and PayHip. WooCommerce is possibly the world's most popular e-commerce platform. It's designed to go with WordPress. It only works with WordPress. So you need to have either a WordPress.com or a self-hosted WordPress site in order to run WooCommerce. Now, I wouldn't recommend running it on WordPress.com. And the reason for that is because you have to pay for a very expensive premium plan. And the WooCommerce plugin for self-hosted WordPress is completely free. So I really can't see the point in paying for a really expensive plan on WordPress.com when you could get yourself WordPress hosting for a few dollars a month, and you could then add WooCommerce for free. So WooCommerce allows you to sell anything. It allows you to sell physical products, so you could sell paperback books if you want to. It also allows you to sell downloadable virtual products, so you could sell downloads, and you can sell subscriptions through it. So you could use WooCommerce as an alternative to Patreon if you want to give people the option of supporting your writing. And if you add the WooCommerce EU VAT Compliance Assistant plugin. There's a snappy name for a plugin. If you add that, it lets you charge VAT in the EU without worrying about having to account for that. It'll report it for you. It'll do all your VAT calculation and reporting for you and make it straightforward. So you need to do that if you're selling books online, because you're going to be selling to people in the EU as well as in other parts of the world. And many authors do say that's one of the reasons that they'd rather sell through Amazon or through the wide retailers as well, if they're wide, because if you do sell through your own website, you do need to work out sales tax, and WooCommerce will work out the sales tax in different parts of the world and in different states in the US for you. Another alternative you have is PayHip. PayHip is designed for selling digital downloads and memberships. So again, you use it for selling ebooks, and you can use it for selling a subscription, something like Patreon. And it also has a WordPress plugin. So this WordPress plugin will let you hook up your PayHip account and your WordPress website so that you can sell directly from WordPress. Now, I would warn you that this message here says the plugin hasn't been tested with the latest 3 major releases of WordPress. It is beneficial to use plugins that are regularly tested with the latest versions of WordPress. And for example, WordPress had a big release not that long ago that changed the interface, something called Gutenberg, which some of you may have heard of. And for a plugin not to have been tested with that would raise some alarm bells for me. But if you install it on your site and test it, and it works okay, then sometimes plugins don't get updated because they just don't need to be updated. So it's not always a problem. So your 2 options I would recommend are WooCommerce or PayHip in order to sell books directly through your site. And selling books direct isn't something that's hugely common amongst authors at the moment, but there are some authors doing it successfully. Orna Ross is one of them. So if you go onto Orna's website, you can buy all of her books direct from her, which means she's not giving up part of her profits to Amazon. Joanna Penn also sells books direct via her website, so you can buy direct from her. And I've got a shop on my own fiction website, which I haven't used an e-commerce platform for at the moment. It's just a simple form and people fill out which book they'd like. And I use this just to sell signed copies. I don't sell ebooks online, but I like the idea of being able to sell signed copies to my fans so that they can buy a book that's a little bit special for them. So those are some examples of how you can sell books directly on your website. So let's have a quick recap on what we covered in this session. Hopefully I've convinced you that your author website is really important and that you need one. And to be honest, if you're listening now, I must have convinced you, because otherwise you've just wasted the last half an hour of your time. We've looked at the options that you have for creating your author website and the different platforms that are available to you, as well as the pros and cons of each. We've looked at content marketing for books and how you can use your blog and your website content to attract new readers and also to engage with your existing readers. We've identified how you can connect your website and your mailing list and get newsletter subscribers right inside your website. And then finally, we looked at how you can sell books directly from your website. So I believe your author website is one of the most important tools that you have for book marketing. Now, obviously I'm biased because I'm a web developer, so I'm always going to think that websites are important. But your website is the hub of your author platform, and putting some time and effort into creating a professional website will enhance your image with your readers and your potential readers, and it will help you attract readers and sell more books. So what do you do if you want to find out more about the subject? You'll be pleased to know I've got your back. So you can find out more about author websites and how to create your own in 3 places. The first is my website, rachelmcwrites.com, and that's full of blog posts and resources that will help you learn all about author websites. My author website blueprint is a free book that you can download from rachelmcwrites.com, and if you go to my website you'll see that nice big graphic in the sidebar. And then finally, my book WordPress for Writers takes you step by step through the process of creating a WordPress website and using it to market your books. So thank you ever so much for being involved in this presentation and for coming along to find out all about author websites. There are some great sessions happening as part of this self-publishing conference, so I urge you to go and check out all of the other topics and the other speakers. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to meet up with you at some point either in the real world or via social media, where I am Rachel McWrites.